We have
During my event,
All right, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome everybody to session 4, our final session, and to marry or not to marry, that is the question. And today's session is called the synthesis. So I really like this picture because it reminds me of Mayapur. If anybody's ever taken the boat from Mayapur to Navadvip, you pass a place where it looks kind of like this, the Jalangi and the Ganga merging. And this is not that. This is in Croatia. It's the Drava and the Danube rivers. But yeah, so far, I put this slide because so far we've been talking about these two paths or two options, right? To marry or to renounce, basically. And in Sanskrit, they're sometimes called the Pravritti Marg and the Nivritti Marg. So Pravritti means the path of engagement with the world in a spiritually progressive way. And Nivritti means basically just renouncing the world. And so, yeah, in session 2, we saw how there can be accidents on both paths if they're done improperly. We also saw how there's like a tension. Sometimes there is tension between the two paths, right? Between the grhasthas and the sannyasis, a little bit of tension or conflict. So here, like if you look at the picture, you can see how the two rivers are coming together. And at the point there, the line of confluence, there's all the turbulence. There's like little whirlpools and it's a little choppy. But then now we don't see it, but if you would follow it further down, then the river is going to, all the, two different colors of water are going to mix and it's going to flow as one, and it's stronger and deeper than before. So Krishna consciousness is very much like this. It's the art of integrating and reconciling apparently contradictory views and differences. Because in pure Krishna consciousness, there's no duality. Everything is basically absolute. It's all on the absolute platform. And yeah, that's basically our whole philosophy that Lord Chaitanya taught was achintya, beda, abeda tattva. That it's inconceivably one and different. So today we're going to talk about that, how achintya, beda, beda tattva, or how this principle of the two paths coming together works out in regard to marriage and renunciation. Okay? So we'll start by looking a little bit about Lord Chaitanya's mission in this world. This is a very important verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It goes, Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Shikshartameka Purusha Purana Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dhari Kripam Gurir Yastamaham Prapadye. So if you look at the words here, Vairagya is the first word. You know what that means? Renunciation. And then Vidya? Knowledge. So we have Vairagya, Vidya, Nija Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga, devotional service. So, and then Shiksha means instructions. And then Artha, do you know that? Something that's valuable, something valuable. Then Eka means one, and Purusha, Purana means the supreme, the old man, the original person. Here that means the original supreme personality of Godhead, who is Sri Krishna Chaitanya, who is Sharira Dhari. He's accepted this form out of his mercy, Kripa, and then Tam Aham Prapadye, I surrender unto him. So it's saying that I surrender unto the supreme personality of Godhead, the original person who has taken this form as Sri Krishna Chaitanya, in order to instruct the world in the process of bhakti yoga, of which vairagya, renunciation, and knowledge are essential components. So that was, of course, there are different purposes for Lord Chaitanya coming, but in relation to us, this was his main purpose, to teach the path of bhakti yoga. And renunciation is a big part of that. In fact, Krishnadas Kaviraj says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahaprabhu Bhakta Ganer Vairagya Pradhan Yadeki Pratihana Gora Bhagavan. That renunciation is the basic principle sustaining the lives of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotees. Seeing this renunciation, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is extremely satisfied. So we can see that renunciation is really a very important part of Bhakti Yoga, especially we're followers of Lord Chaitanya, we're Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And so our lives are also sustained by this basic principle of renunciation. So then, yeah, also renunciation is also a major theme of the Bhagavad Gita. It's the conclusion, right? The whole conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is the perfection of renunciation. But then an interesting point is that Bhagavad Gita was spoken to Arjuna, who was not a sannyasi, he was a householder. So then why would Krishna instruct a householder who has no intention of taking sannyas about renunciation?
Renunciation is so equally to all ashram.
Dang, I shouldn't have put that there. Should have made you think a little bit more. Yeah, so that actually Stephen came to this conclusion yesterday. Stephen's a genius. Remember you said that at the end? He's like, it seems that renunciation applies equally to all the ashrams. So that's like, yeah, that's why, because renunciation is just as important to the grihastas as it is to the brahmacharis and the vanaprasthas and the sannyasis. So to understand how this is true, let's take a deeper look at what Krishna says about renunciation in Bhagavad Gita. So, whoa, what happened there? Anyways, more or less get it. So Krishna, yeah, in this last chapter, the perfection of renunciation, the conclusion is Sarva Dharmam Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. And so first of all, it's interesting that the perfection of renunciation is not giving up one's home, giving up one's family, giving up one's material things or one's money or whatever like that. It's giving up all varieties of religion. So what he's referring here to is, we already discussed in the beginning that he's not talking about varnashram dharma. He's talking about he's talking about the lower Vedic processes like karma kanda, these rituals, worshiping demigods, and that kind of thing. And also like mundane morality and ethics. Because these are the things that were basically disturbing Arjuna's mind in the beginning of the Battle of Kurukshetra. He was concerned about piety and sin, whether he was going to get sinful reactions, what's the proper etiquette in relation to family members, and then social responsibilities to the family and the dynasty and all that. So yeah, as we mentioned, as long as his mind was, toiling over those ideas, he wasn't able to surrender to Krishna. So Krishna is telling him, just forget about all those lower processes of religion. Don't worry whether you're going to incur sinful reactions, because aham tvam sarva papebhyo, I can free you from all sinful reactions. You don't need to worry about that. So just give those things up. And Krishna uses, the word that he uses here for to giving up is tyag. It's there in parityajya. The root word there is tyag, and pari means all around. So he's saying all these, that's why Prabhupada translates all varieties, all these different other things, just give them all up. So to see what Krishna really means, what Krishna really wants us to give up, or let's say, we can look at other uses of the word tyag in the Bhagavad Gita. And I took an inventory here of different places where that Sanskrit root, tyag, or in its various forms is used. So we see there's many places where it pertains to attachment to the fruits of action. So we have to give up attachment to the fruits of our action. And then we have to give up material desires born of mental speculation. And we have to give up lust, anger, greed, and then we also have to give up the sense of proprietorship. So these are the things that we need to renounce. And it fits with what we were talking about the other day when we were seeing how Srila Prabhupada was saying that it's not that in the relationship between men and women, it's not that the man is essentially bad or that the woman is essentially bad, but what's bad is that either one of them is seeing the other one as an object for their sense enjoyment, basically. So that's really the problem. So it's not the thing itself. The things of the world are basically neutral. It's the attitude or the intentions and the material motivations and material desires and the anarthas that play out in relation to those things that are the problem. So that's what Krishna is saying that we need to give up. It's the attachment. It's not that we have to give up the fruits of action, but we have to give up our attachment to those. And then we have to give up the desires, desiring independently of Krishna, and lust, anger, greed, and all that. So I thought we could, and the other side of it is that Krishna, if we look back again at Sarva Dharma Parityajya, he doesn't stop there. It's not, he doesn't just say give it up. So tyag, or giving up these things, is not enough. But he says, Sarva Dharma Parityajya, Mam Ekam Sharanam Braja. Just surrender to me, take full shelter of me. So it's not that we just give them up, but we have to positively dedicate them to Krishna. That's the complete renunciation. It's giving up our material desire to enjoy them, and then instead dedicating to them in the service of Krishna. So I thought that we could discuss how we could dedicate each of these things here that are listed on this slide in the service of Krishna. So first of all, attachment to the fruits of action. How can we, in a positive way, dedicate that to Krishna? Whoever has an idea, just grab your mic and tell me.
We can, if we're successful, recognize that Krishna was the power and the intelligence and everything required for the success. And if we are failure as a fruit, then we can recognize that if we tried our best, it was Krishna's desire that we didn't succeed. And so either way, if we recognize I'm not the doer, then we naturally become detached from success or failure.
Right, because if I didn't do it, actually, then I have no right to it. So I have no right to be attached to it. Krishna just did what he had to do, and whatever he did was best, and therefore, I don't need to be attached. I'll just be attached to Krishna. Parker?
Yeah. To hold the conception that I'm attached to serving Krishna, and all the different things that I do are just ways that I serve Krishna, rather than be attached to these individual things as an independent thing from my service to Krishna.
Okay, good. So instead of being not being attached to the fruits of action, but being attached to the service, and then leaving the fruits up to Krishna.
Yeah.
So being attached to, so that's a positive thing, because it's actually the nature of the soul is to be attached. We need to be attached to something. We can't just be floating around like with no affiliation, with no sense of belonging, or no relationships. We need to be attached to something, but we just need to be attached to the right things. So attached to the service and leave the results up to Krishna. Attached to just following Krishna's plan, whether he wants it to be successful or failure, that doesn't matter. Stephen or Max?
Following the example that the Goswami set in if you're generating monetary wealth, then donating 50% of it, and keeping the other 25 for family, and the other 25 for savings and riches.
Yeah, that's good. So that's the whole point of like giving in charity to a Krishna conscious cause, to a worthy cause. That helps us to be detached. Yep, Stephen?
I mean, it made me think of Nanda in terms of how she cooks. She's very attached to having it come out perfectly for Krishna, for her deities. Whereas that's the fruit of her action, is pleasing Krishna.
Right.
So that's what she's attached to, not necessarily the particular composition, but actually that's just a factor in the desire of the fruit of pleasing Krishna.
So attached to.
Yes, it's not the creation in and of itself, it's the fact that this is an element in my desire to please Krishna.
Yeah, that's good. That's a very subtle difference too. It's not that I'm attached to preparing like a perfect meal, but I'm attached to pleasing Krishna. And so I want to prepare a perfect meal for his pleasure. Yeah, that's really good. Those are all super good things.
Because then that comes with the detachment that even if it doesn't turn out how I want it, materially in terms of the different elements, as long as Krishna's still pleased, then I'm fine with that. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah.
But that's ultimately what I want. So I don't care if I totally mess up if Krishna's happy.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. And I was also thinking in relation to this thing of attachment is that positive attachment. If you look at the Nectar of Devotion, chapter, I think it's chapter 18 where he talks about Bhava Bhakti. And it starts off with that list of the characteristics of a devotee who's on the level of Bhava Bhakti. A lot of them are about attachments. Attachment to chanting the holy name, attachment to hearing the Bhagavatam, attachment to living in a place which is related to the Lord's pastimes. So there are all these attachments. So there are things that we should be positively attached to, and all these things that you mentioned. So yeah, these are all good meditations. All right, how about material desires? Lust. How can lust and lust basically is material desires. So we'll link material desires from that line to and lust with the third line together. How can those be positively dedicated to Krishna? Okay. Yeah, we've been talking all about that, right? Purifying one's lust by engaging it in Krishna's service. Yeah. Also, lust doesn't necessarily just mean sex desire, just any kind of material desire. Ariana?
I think that's been really helpful for me. It's like trying to see where all of my different propensities can be used in serving ISKCON devotees.
Yeah.
I'm really like intellectually minded and like to plan and to do these like projects and stuff.
Oh, grab the mic there because Zoom people can't get.
So yeah, just seeing how all these different ideas and projects that I have in my head can be used towards preaching.
Yeah.
Or helping devotees.
Right. So dovetailing your interests in Krishna's service. Yeah, perfect. That's the same thing with do you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, different.
Okay. Yeah, it just remind me of that verse about Ambarish Maharaj. It says, Kamam chadasye natu kama kamyaya. Kama means lust or desire, material desire. So kamam chadasye, he uses all of his desires to desire to be dasye, the servant of Krishna. And then kamam chadasye natu kama kamya. So natu kama kamyaya means that he doesn't desire anything for his own sense gratification, but he just desires to be Krishna's servant. Parker?
Yeah, so you're talking about lust doesn't have to be sexual, and I started thinking about addiction. Like, there's like an addictive propensity in a lot of people, and if that just gets transferred to something spiritual, it can be really helpful.
Addicted to chanting the holy name.
Just like,
Addiction to prasadam. Yeah, it's really good. And like, because the nature, Prabhupada says we can't be desireless. So, it's the nature of the soul to desire. So we have to desire to serve Krishna. The desire to, please Krishna.
Thing,
What's that?
get a thing, and latch on. This is it.
Get attached to your service for Krishna. This is my service. Yeah. Okay. How about anger? How can we positively dedicate anger in Krishna's service?
Well, I don't have much realization on this subject, but I know Srila Prabhupada would get furious at hearing Mayavad philosophy.
Yeah.
Because he loves Krishna so much that he doesn't want to hear anyone misleading people and openly blaspheming Krishna.
Yeah, that's a good one. And remember when we were reading the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita? Or was it the preface of the Bhagavad Gita? Prabhupada was just slamming these people who like interpret the Bhagavad Gita to make out that, to use Krishna's own words to try to say that Krishna doesn't exist, these mundane wranglers and the impersonalists and so-called scholars and So, Max?
Like righteous fury. It makes me think of like Arjuna on the battlefield. Like using that propensity to protect devotees and protect Krishna and using it in the service of Krishna ultimately. In a way that's righteous. It also makes me think kind of Vivekananda, but like not as like a direct thing, but as like a specific pastime when like she needed to use anger as a tool to protect the devotees and make sure that this person wasn't engaging with Krishna lunch staff. Well, like she made sure that the Krishna staff was protected
scared him away.
Yeah.
Basically, he's good at that. Yeah, it's important, you know, somebody's got to take a stand and be tough and like deal with these people who are potentially harmful to devotees and people who blaspheme devotees. That's our duty. Okay, what about greed? How do we use greed? What's that?
Greedy to serve Krishna.
Greedy to serve Krishna. Okay. What else?
Yeah, you could be greedy to get a lot of books out. Be greedy to write a lot of pages. Like goal setting.
Right.
Can be sort of greedy.
Like ambition, having like ambitions and to serve Krishna. Yeah, that's good, because I was thinking that in the Nectar of Instruction, Rupa Goswami writes, Jana Sangas Chaloyam Cha Sadbhya Bhaktir Vinashyati, that loyam, greed, is one of the things that destroys devotional service. But then in Nectar of Devotion, he says that the price to buy a ticket to go back to the spiritual world is loyam, the intense greed, the intense desire to attain it. So greediness for mundane achievements destroys our devotional service, but greediness for spiritual achievements is actually the ticket. It's like the price we have to pay to go back to Godhead, is to have like intense longing, you know, for Krishna's association and pure devotional service to Krishna. Ariana?
In the chat, similar to what you're saying, they said greedy for our purification and greedy to go back to Godhead.
Yeah, that's good.
That can even go to ashram, or greedy to have others go back to Godhead.
Yeah, and then we go out and preach. Yeah, really good. Parker?
Yeah. It said in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that they plundered the storehouse of love of God. They robbed it.
Yeah.
And so this idea of loyal is very present in our tradition. It's like, look, we don't deserve this.
Yeah.
But damn it, Krishna, I want you. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna steal it. I'm gonna rob it.
Beg, borrow, steal.
Yeah, you know, you go up to somebody that's way advanced and you ask them a question.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a greedy mentality. It's like, no, I need this. I need this mercy. Like, you please help me.
Yeah, good. Okay, last one. Set the sense of proprietorship. How does this play out in a positive way in Krishna's service?
Krishna's proprietor. You know, is that too far off?
No, the sense that I am the proprietor of something. Stephen?
I mean, that's like one of the main states of consciousness that's being purified in the grhastha ashram, the sense of ownership, because you're taking temporary proprietorship, sort of placeholder proprietorship on Krishna's behalf.
Right.
Your family members, all the things you're using for Christian service, house, work, money, all these things.
Yeah.
So naturally, because we're conditioned, we have that sense of proprietorship, even if we understand intellectually that these things aren't mine. So that is being used in Christian service in the grhastha.
Okay, so that can, if we see that we're caretakers, the ultimate Krishna's the proprietor, but we're the caretakers, then that gets purified.
Yeah, because even though we understand I'm just a caretaker, still that feeling is there because we're pure.
Right.
I am the proprietor of this. So that is what's being purified.
Yeah, that's good. But then beyond that, there are ways that we actually can use our sense of proprietorship in a real, like in an eternal, absolute sense. Yeah. Ariana?
My favorite 2 words, my Krishna.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But that's actually the difference between the Vaikuntha mood and the Vrindavan mood. The Vaikuntha mood is that I'm Krishna's, but the Vrindavan mood is Krishna is mine. Krishna is my son. Krishna is my friend. Krishna is my lover, and then as we advance in Krishna consciousness, although we're not on this level, but already we can think Krishna is my protector, Krishna is my maintainer, Krishna is my constant companion, Krishna is my best friend, my well-wisher. So we have this relationship with Krishna that we can say that this is I have a relationship with Krishna. Krishna is my Lord and Master and my best friend. So yeah, and then as we advance in Krishna consciousness, then we get more sense that I am Krishna's, yeah, and Krishna is mine. It's reciprocal. So that's very sweet. So yeah, so like this, giving up this world and our relationships is not the process in relation to, renunciation. Renunciation doesn't mean giving up the things of this world, giving up our friends and family and all that. That's what the jnanis do, the tyagis, right? The jnanis and the impersonalists and the yogis, they give up all these things and just go live in a cave and whatever. But that's not what the bhakti yogis do. The bhakti yogis are more like, okay, let's take all these things and use them positively in Krishna's service. Even these subtle things like attachment and desires and anger and greed and proprietorship, we positively dedicate everything in Krishna's service. That's like the unique and the amazing thing of bhakti, which distinguishes us from other paths, is one of the things. And that is a principle of bhakti which is given by Rupa Goswami called Yukta Vairagya. It says, Anasaktasya Vishayan Yatarham Upayunjataha Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyam Uchyate. When one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightfully situated above possessiveness. And then Rupa Goswami goes on to say in the next verse that people who give up things that can be used in Krishna's service are not so complete in their renunciation. And we see that although Lord Chaitanya preached renunciation, he himself got married twice. And he accepted sannyas only as a preaching strategy. And then most of his followers, as we said yesterday, they were householders. So Lord Chaitanya, he showed us this principle of Yukta Vairagya, the perfection of renunciation. Yeah, dedicating everything to Krishna. And this is right out of Bhagavad Gita. Yat karoshi yad ashnasi, yad juhosi dadasi yat tapasyasi konteya, tat kurusva madarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. So he doesn't say stop what you're doing, stop what you're eating, stop doing whatever. He says, no, just do it as an offering to me. Just take whatever it is and positively dedicate it to me in devotional service. And that's basically the essence of sannyas. And that's what Prahlad Maharaj, actually this is describing the sannyasi in the 7th canto, that the Tridandi sannyasi carries 3 dandas signifying kaya, mano, vakya, body, mind, and words, and all of these being offered to Vishnu. There's not that one has to be a sannyasi to offer one's mind, body, and words to Vishnu. A householder can do it. Brahmachari can, like any ashram, a person can do that. And then it goes on to say that a peaceful, equipoised person who is factually advanced in spiritual consciousness does not need to accept the symbols of a sannyasi, such as the Tridanda and the Kamandalu. So, and we've talked about before how the householder can be a householder who dedicates body, mind, and words to Krishna's service, and who positively dedicates everything that he's taking care of within his household in Krishna's service is as good as a sannyasi. And Lord Chaitanya, basically this was when he traveled, he did a tour of South India. He was preaching Krishna consciousness, and this was the basic message that he was preaching. There was one, before we get to that, I was going to start reading. There was one Brahmin that he met in South India named Kurma. And he stayed in Kurma's house for some days. And then when he was about to leave, this Kurma Brahmin had become so attached to him because Lord Chaitanya's, amazing personality. And because he's the Supreme Personality of God, he's all attractive. So he's like, I just want to go with you, forget about my home. I don't need to be here. I just want to go and travel with you and be with you and chant Hare Krishna with you and preach with you. And then Lord Chaitanya said, don't speak like that again. Better to remain at home and chant the holy name of Krishna always. And it's to this Brahmin who he speaks this very famous verse that we quote a lot. Yarideka tarikaha Krishna upadesh amara agyaya gura anantare desh. Instruct everyone to follow the orders of Lord Sri Krishna as they are given in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. In this way, become a spiritual master and try to liberate everyone in this land. That was like a general instruction that he gave to almost everybody that he met on that South Indian tour. He met so many people, and many of them wanted to come with him, and he told them all, stay home, and this is what you got to do. Study the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and instruct everyone you meet in the principles that you learn there. He says, if you follow this instruction, your materialistic life at home will not obstruct your spiritual advancement. Indeed, if you follow these regulative principles, we will again meet here, or rather, you will never lose my company. Very sweet, very powerful. So, so the point is that the renunciation taught by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, as we were looking at, and the renunciation taught by Lord Chaitanya is not a superficial thing. It's not about, changing your dress. It's not about, symbols like having a danda or whatever, but it's about using everything in Krishna's service. And as we saw, it's a universal principle which applies to all ashrams, to anyone who's practicing bhakti. So it's a misconception to think that only brahmacharis, vanaprasthas, and sannyasis are renounced. It's with all the ashrams. So then what we can do now is we'll look at some other misconceptions about the grihastha ashram. And I'm going to just put some misconceptions up on the screen there and ask you to refute them. All right. So for each one, I'll give you like 2 or 3 minutes to just like smash it to pieces. Okay. All right. So the first, the spelling myths about the grihastha ashram. Misconception number 1: grihastha ashram is a fall down from brahmachari ashram. Stephen.
It requires way more responsibility and self-regulation. So how could it possibly be a step down if it requires you to be a more controlled person?
Yeah, good point. Anyone want to add anything?
I think it depends on the consciousness. Like if you're a brahmachari, you have sexual desires, and that's all you're thinking of, and that's why you want to get into grihastha ashram, then it's a fall down. Because if you're and you do it like in, how do I say this? With no restriction. Like you have no, like you just feel like you've been deprived for your brahmachari, I guess, tenure. And then you can fall down because at least the brahmachari ashram kept you regulated and you were able to kind of control your senses. But then when you go to grihastha, if you go the other way, I guess it could be like.
Yeah, but then it's not grihastha ashram, then it's just grihamedi. Grihastha ashram means there's still principles. You're still doing sadhana, and you're still, there's restrictions that apply. So yeah. I mean, if the person is in brahmachari ashram and he's like sexually agitated or something, then yeah, he may do well to try to get that under control a little better before getting into grihastha ashram. But if he follows the principles of grihastha ashram, that will also get gradually purified, as we heard this morning.
Grihastha ashram is not a fall down if it's grihastha ashram.
Okay, good. There we go. Parker?
Yeah, brahmachari life means student life, and most often student life for a grihastha couple who is their guru.
Most often what? I didn't get.
Brahmacharis, they would live in the grihastha home
as
their guru.
Yeah.
And serve them because they would teach them the principles of life.
Yes. Yeah, in the Vedic culture, the gurus were very often grihasthas, like even Krishna, right? Krishna went to Gurukul, and it was Sandipani Muni and his wife. He was living as a brahmachari there with grihastha guru.
It's the natural progression of the Vedic system.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so the Vedic system is not bringing people back; it's bringing people forward. Stephen?
You have further responsibility, whereas brahmachari, you're just mostly responsible for yourself. A small circle of influence, but grihasthas are responsible for maintaining all of the other ashrams, as well as basically being, as parents, spiritual masters for their children, raising them.
Yeah.
So it's so much more responsibility beyond just for yourself.
Yeah, it's a huge responsibility. And essentially, brahmachari ashram is preparing, the person to become qualified to be a grihastha. Did you want to say something, Briha?
Yeah, I was thinking transition of ashram, and it's not necessarily fall down, but a real fall down would be stopping chanting Hare Krishna or leaving the association of devotees.
Yeah.
So you stay in brahmachari ashram, and it will lead to an unnatural position, and eventually making offenses or just leaving the movement altogether, that's the real fall.
That's the real fall down. Yeah. Okay, good. I have a little quote here that's just a point on this topic that in relation to, because we heard this verse from Shukadeva Goswami, apashyatam atmatattvam griheshu grihamedinam, where which means that those who are blind to the absolute truth, who do not understand that they're not the bodies but spirit souls, then they get absorbed in materialistic household life and become grihamedis. But Srila Prabhupada comments in relation to that persons who are devoid of the knowledge of Atmatapa are misguided, but those who are devotees of the Lord and have perfect realization of transcendental knowledge are not bewildered. So he's just making that distinction between the grihamedi and the grihastha ashram. That if, like Kevin pointed this out nicely, that if the brahmachari goes into household life thinking that, now I'm going to enjoy sense gratification, then that could be a fall down. But if he goes into actual, with knowledge and with transcendental knowledge and with realization that I'm a spirit soul and my family members are spirit souls, and we're all going to try to, work through our desires in a yukta vairagya spirit, then it's not a fall down. And that actually, as some of you pointed out, it's a step up, because it's the next step up in the ashram system. And we saw how the prachetas and the haryashvas and so many personalities in the Bhagavatam, when they before entering grihastha ashram, they go and do like thousands of years of austerities, like severe austerities, to prepare themselves to enter grihastha ashram. That was actually the Vedic system. And Kalakant Prabhu was telling me about how in the early days, when he first joined the movement, the very early days before things got like fanatical and weird, but in the very early days, they would join and they would all be in the ashram as brahmacharis, brahmacharinis. And then only when a devotee was like fixed up, was initiated, was like doing steady service, then he would be considered as someone ready for marriage. And it was like a privilege. If someone was allowed to get married, it meant that he was a fixed up devotee. Somebody who was not a fixed up devotee, marriage was not an option for him, because it was like, no, you're not ready to get married. You need to mature, you need to grow up, you need to become steady in your Krishna consciousness, get initiated and be mature. So and that's why like the grihastas are called, they have this word at the end of the name, adhikari, right? Like you could say Kalakanta das adhikari. So adhikari actually means qualified, it means qualification or right, like a privilege. So it means that that person, he, because of his qualification, he has the right to get married. So that's it. The brahmachari is qualifying the person to get married. All right, so here's the next misconception. The wife is a cause of degradation for the husband.
She keeps him humble.
Okay.
And gives him energy.
Right, we saw that with Priya Vrata, right? Yeah. Okay, good. Stephen?
I mean, you just presented that quote the other night about how the wife is like the fortress commander, basically protecting the man from his own senses.
Yeah. So it's not that she degrades him, she actually protects him from degrading himself. Yeah. All right. Anything else on that point?
There are many examples in the Bhagavatam of the wives being more devotionally, like making the right decision, and dragging their husbands out of trouble.
Yeah.
Kaliya, Gandhari, Kaliya's wife. And
that's
Gandhari,
right. The wives of the Yogic Brahmins.
Yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one. And we had the example the other day of Vindyavali, the wife of Bali Maharaj. Yes. So it's, often the wife is the cause of the husband's, realization and elevation and salvation.
You have another person that's there working for your benefit. And if she's intelligent and devotionally inclined, then that's another brain.
That's great. Yeah, that's like a member of your team helping you.
Two better than one.
Yeah, and Prabhupada says of his female disciples, these women are not ordinary women. They are preachers. They are Vaishnava. By their association, one becomes a Vaishnava. So they're not a degrading association, but rather by their association, a person can become a Vaishnava. And there's some examples where a woman becomes a devotee and then she makes her husband a devotee. Stephen?
Yeah, I was just thinking, you quoted the other day saying that they're not Maya, they're actually capable of delivering someone from Maya.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's the point. So, okay, and the next one is similar. The wife is always less intelligent.
My mom and dad.
Your dad's not listening.
Define intelligent.
Define intelligent. You want to define intelligent?
There's different kinds of intelligence. What do you mean by
Okay.
intelligent?
Yeah. Generally, it's like that. There's like rational intelligence. There's emotional intelligence. There's intuition, and so, yeah, men may have more of a certain type of intelligence, generally speaking, and women may have more generally speaking another type of intelligence. But that's also generally speaking. But there are examples where women may be higher in typically male form of intelligence than a lot of men, and vice versa. Stephen?
if the devotee men in the grhastha ashram, their goal is love for Krishna, and the devotee women, their goal is also love for Krishna, then nobody is less intelligent than them.
Yeah, that's basically what Prabhupada says here. Says women have been compared to Shudras and Vaishyas, Striyo Vaishyas Tata Shudra. On the spiritual platform, however, when one is elevated to the platform of Krishna consciousness, whether one is a man, woman, Shudra, whatever, everyone is equal. That's from the purport in the Bhagavatam. And then he says in the conversation also, spiritually advanced man and woman, they are equal. So these are very clear statements. And then there's a practical example here where Prabhupada's talking to some devotees. And he's talking about this couple, Nandarani and Dayananda. Says both of them are very intelligent, and Nandarani is more intelligent than her husband. I know that. And so another devotee says, I find that he, talking about Dayananda, is very intelligent, Srila Prabhupada. Dayananda? Yes. Prabhupada, he is intelligent, but Nandarani is still more intelligent. So it's not that always. And Prabhupada, although Prabhupada says in his that women are generally less intelligent, when he's saying that Nandarani is more intelligent. So it's not that just because she happens to be in a female body, then it's necessarily she's less intelligent.
Yeah, in the Gita, Krishna says of women are in intelligence.
Yeah.
And there's other qualities.
Yeah, that's right. But in any case, on the spiritual level, like Stephen was saying, they both are, and like Lord Chaitanya, it said in the Bhagavatam also, Krishna Varna Tusha Krishnam, Sango Pangastra Parshadam, Yagyai Sankirtana Prayer, Yajanti Hi Sumeda Saha. That those who are sufficiently intelligent, those who are endowed with sufficient intelligence, they'll worship Lord Chaitanya in this age of Kali Yuga. So whoever's engaged in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement is sufficiently intelligent, whether they're man, woman. Okay? Children are a disturbance to spiritual life. Rihat.
I was just hearing Mother Irmila talk about this recently, that it's really nice with children because you can just talk about Krishna Lila and they love it.
They
but
love
with
it.
adults, not necessarily. You can just go up to them and just start talking about Govardhan Lila. Where you want to talk about politics or whatever maybe. So they're simple. And they're totally willing just to talk about Krishna.
Yeah, that's totally true. I experienced that. Stephen?
Taking care of children is your spiritual life. It's actually a huge element of your spiritual life for your advancement.
Yeah.
Giving care and nurturing someone in Krishna consciousness. It's like constant preaching.
Oh, yeah. And there's that famous letter that Prabhupada wrote to, what's her name? Arudha Mataji, I think. Yeah. She was a pujari in the temple, and when she had when her child was born, she was feeling bad that she wasn't able to do her pujari service, worshiping the deity. And then Prabhupada said, "What is this? What is this nonsense? Don't be confused. Your child worship is better than deity worship." He said that. He said, "Your responsibility is to take care of this child, and taking care of the child is better than taking care of the deity in the temple."
I was also thinking, like, what is the safest situation in life? It's being constantly engaged in devotional service.
Yeah.
So if we can see parenthood as that exactly, how more engaged could we possibly be?
Yeah.
Rather than just taking care of even just like objects, arranging objects, cleaning things, but actually nurturing a living being.
Yeah, yeah, nurturing an advanced soul. You know, if you took birth in a devotee family, that means that's already an advanced soul, possibly more advanced than you are. So yeah. All right, good. Here's a little quote here. Prabhupada says, "These children are given to us by Krishna. They are Vaishnavas and we must be very careful to protect them. They are not ordinary children. They are Vaikuntha children. And we are very fortunate we can give them a chance to advance further in Krishna consciousness." So it's our good fortune that we can take care of them. All right. Grihasthas who have outside jobs are basically karmis.
They found the temple programs and guru preaching.
Okay, yeah, so the money that they're earning, they're using for preaching, for Krishna conscious purposes. All right.
Just because externally they're engaged in similar things doesn't mean that anything actually. It's all about their internal consciousness.
Yeah, the external activity may be the same as some so-called karmi, but internally the consciousness is very different, right? Just like on Balakukshetra, many people were fighting on that battlefield. They're all doing the same activity, but for Arjuna, it was pure devotional service. It wasn't a karma job. Kevin?
Ganeshan Prabhu said that a good way to you do like I guess outside jobs in Krishna conscious way is to not think that this company is paying me, but that this is my service and Krishna is providing that.
That's nice.
Like, I'm not working for this company. Even on the days that get really tough, like if you think it's the company, you might be like, you know what, I'm out of here. But if you're thinking I'm doing this service for Krishna, and then he's going to, provide for me, and he's like every day. So.
That's really cool. Yeah. So Krishna's giving me my paycheck through this other person, using this other person to just pass it on to me. That's really nice. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember they used to say that like if a devotee had an outside job, they would call it a karmi job. Yeah, he used to be a book distributor, but now he's just gone and got a karmi job. Yeah, it's unfortunate that some people see it that way, but yeah, it's service. It depends on your state of consciousness.
Also, there's the quote that in the Gita, whatever action a great person performs, common people follow. And so just being in the material world, like Ramatirtha Prabhu and Kalakanta Prabhu, they're interacting with materialistic people, but they're setting an extraordinary example without saying a word about scriptures or about Krishna. Yeah. And Krishna says that in the Bhagavad Gita too. He says that if I would give up my duties, then that would disturb other people because they follow a great person. Yeah, even I'm following. We should all do our duties according to our varnashram designations in order to set example for the general populace. Yeah. Okay, so here's a letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote to Gopal Krishna Maharaj. He's a Maharaj, but before he had a so-called karmi job. He was living in Canada. He was a businessman actually when he became a devotee. So devotees were getting on his case, like, oh, you're a karmi because you're just doing business. And so he was worried with, should I give up my job? Prabhupada says, any person whose constant occupation is Krishna consciousness, he is not a karmi. He is a devotee in all circumstances. So you should accept the best source of monetary income and use it for Krishna, and that is better than sannyas. Pretty amazing, right? That's some strong speaking. Yeah. And we can see that devotees like Jayananda Prabhu was driving a taxi and giving all the money to the temple. And even like when Tamal Krishnaraj and Vishnu Jan joined, when they first joined, in those days, they didn't have books to distribute because the movement was so new. They didn't have means of making money. So Prabhupada actually told them, we need some money to pay the rent and things. Some of you need to get jobs. And so they both got a job working at Kodak, developing film and stuff. And they were giving the money to the temple. And that's how the temple was, staying afloat. And then afterwards, they figured out that they could print back Godhead magazines and go on Harinam and, distribute back to PTGs and get some donations. So they were able to quit the Kodak job. But that was Prabhupada's instruction to them. Max, you want to say something?
Yeah. I remember hearing this really awesome story of someone, like a devotee was like working in their job and they were following like the principles of the Bhagavad Gita and performing the job like very nicely. And you're performing it so nicely.
Oh yeah, I told you that story.
It sounds like it's one of these amazing people. You probably can tell me.
Go ahead.
Okay. So the owner of the company like notices that this person is working so well and then like asks them like what they're doing and like, you know, talking about how everybody like really enjoys them and like they're so productive and everything. And he just was like, well, yeah, I just follow these principles in the Bhagavad Gita and I perform my job very nicely. And then the employee or the CEO, the owner, is so like enthused about everything that this employee is talking about that he has the employee give like a seminar on the Bhagavad Gita and teaching everyone in the whole company how to like work with these principles and to gain the same efficiency. So in that way, like even through this work, that can be a form of very potent preaching.
Yeah, everybody got their copy of the Bhagavad Gita. They're reading it together, discussing it. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, devotees, when devotees are out in the world, they can actually, you know, whoever they come in contact with out there, you know, gets exposed to Krishna consciousness in different ways. So it's a way of benefiting people. Okay, I think this is the last one. To be renounced, you must leave your family. This one we've been talking about a lot. So, Stephen?
Renunciation is internal, not external.
Yes. Good. Anything else? That's pretty final. All right. So Prabhupada says, but when your wife and child are all cooperating in your Krishna consciousness, there is no hampering in your progress. So keep yourself always in Krishna consciousness with your family members. Raise your children to that standard and employ your energy for serving Krishna. Then even though you are in family life, you are as good as a sannyasi. So this is like a thing, you know, Prabhupada many times he's saying that householders are as good as sannyasi. Even your outside job is, you're as good as a sannyasi. So it's all, he's really stressing this point that Stephen just said, that renunciation is an internal thing. It's not dependent on our ashram. It's not dependent on what we wear, what activity we perform, what situation we're in. It transcends all that. And also Narada Muni says here that householders can go back to Godhead directly from the grhastha ashram. It's not that they necessarily have to even take vanaprastha and sannyas. It says, O king, one should perform his occupational duties according to these instructions as well as other instructions given in the Vedic literature, just to remain a devotee of Lord Krishna. Thus, even while at home, one may be able to reach the destination. The Sanskrit there is grihe pyasya gatim yaya, that even from the griha, even from the home, one can attain the supreme goal. Well, here's a quote that from Uttama Prabhu from the Grihastha Vision team. Somebody like to read this one? Ariana.
Renunciation is something that naturally happens when one becomes attached to Krishna. Renouncing one's tendency to enjoy materially as one progresses spiritually and is only interested in pleasing Krishna. It doesn't mean one doesn't have affection for family members, especially if they are conducive to advancement. It just means one sees them in relationship with Krishna. And that doesn't necessarily mean one has to leave them. Srila Prabhupada has mentioned that if family life is a spiritual atmosphere, there is no need to leave. Granted, one may spend more and more time hearing and chanting and bothering less with material maintenance, so it's good to plan for retirement. But it's more about the internal consciousness. Some may want to renounce alone, others may renounce within the family. Utama Devi Dasi is kind grhastha vision team.
Yeah, I really like this point at the end, that either way it's renounced. You either renounce, you leave the family and renounce, or you renounce within the family environment. And also the point about how gradually within the grihastha ashram, by serving Krishna along with the family members, you gradually renounce the tendency to enjoy the material facilities of the grihastha ashram, and you become more attached to chanting Hare Krishna, hearing, and doing service and things. So then to sort of plan for that, because it goes with the natural development of Krishna consciousness within the ashram, and then you're like, okay, so now my children are grown up and moved out. So you actually you think about how are we going to now just immerse ourselves in Krishna consciousness, husband and wife, or whatever family members are still left there around, and how to simplify the life, like, work less, gradually, like, work less, minimize your needs, minimize like whatever financial demands you have, and simplify, minimize the material engagements, and so that you can dedicate more and more time to just direct Krishna consciousness as preparing to leave the body, basically. And then the other family members can give a lot of support with that, because in leaving the body, the person needs physical care, and they need spiritual care, and maybe the family members are the best people to give that, because they know you, they care about you, they're willing to sacrifice for you, as they've been doing, for so many years. If you're fortunate to have, like, a really nice husband or wife, then they can help you go back to Godhead. So it's really good. All right. Now we have a little, this verse was actually, is it this one? Oh, no. Okay, would somebody like to read this here about the Krishna conscious householder being as good as a sannyasi?
So the sannyasi can be accepted even in grhastha life, even in householder life. Because in one sense, all these boys and girls who are working for Krishna, they have no other desire. They are all sannyasis because they have no desire to achieve any result out of their work. The only thing they want, Krishna bhakti, how Krishna will be satisfied. They are engaged in preaching work because they want to satisfy Krishna. Therefore, they are all sannyasis.
Thank you. Yeah, that point's very clear. And it's nice to hear these things, right? It's like, it makes so much sense. And it's just like, obviously, when you hear it, it's just like, of course, why is anybody like, why is there even any tension? Why is there any conflict? We all want the same thing. We just want Krishna bhakti. And therefore, what is really the difference? The differences are just cosmetic, basically, in one sense. So yeah, and that's what Prabhupada's saying here in this purport. Somebody like to read this one? Max.
A guru or spiritual master can be anyone who is well conversant with the science of Krishna. Therefore, although Prahlad Maharaj was a grhastha ruling over the demons, he was a Paramahamsa, the best of human beings, and thus he is our guru. In the list of gurus or authorities, Prahlad Maharaj's name is therefore mentioned. The conclusion is that a Paramahamsa is an exalted devotee, Prabhupada Priya. Such a Paramahamsa may be in any stage of life, brahmachari, grhastha, vanaprastha, or sannyas, and being equally liberated and exalted, and be equally liberated and exalted.
Yeah, equally liberated and exalted. So in the sense of spiritual advancement and Krishna consciousness, it doesn't matter whether one is a brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, or sannyasi. So then what does matter? And we're going to look at that here. What matters is what is right for the individual. So it's kind of like, I've heard this analogy before, that it's like if, that's why I have the seeds here in the picture. It's like if you have 3 different seeds. Let's say you have a rice seed, a broccoli seed, and a pumpkin seed. So there's basic things that they all need, right? They all need soil, they all need water, they all need sunlight, they all need carbon dioxide to grow into plants and produce fruit and all that, or vegetable or grain or whatever they're going to produce. So they all need the basic things. But then in order to grow nicely, they each need somewhat different conditions, right? For example, the rice needs a lot of water. The pumpkin needs space because it needs to spread out. And the broccoli prefers cool weather. So like that, if you want them to thrive, you need to put them in the right condition. So yeah, and devotees are kind of the same in that all devotees need to chant Hare Krishna, hear Srimad Bhagavatam, take prasadam, associate with devotees, these things. But at the same time, different devotees thrive, or they're more likely to thrive in certain circumstances. So like you can't, if there's a young woman who's like very simple and very renounced and she just wants to stay in the brahmacharya in the ashram, then, she shouldn't be forced to get married. And if you have a young man who's, he wants to take responsibility, he wants to have a family, he wants to have more space, he wants to take his own initiative and, start a new project, and the temple's not supporting him or whatever, then to force him to stay in the brahmacharya ashram would actually like be violence, because it would stop his, it would stunt his enthusiasm in Krishna consciousness and stunt his ability to grow in the way that he needs to grow. So yeah, I mean, it's common, like especially I saw this in India, that the parents, they want their children to be doctors or engineers or something. So the child wants to be a writer or wants to be an actor or something, and they're just like, no, you have to be an engineer. And then what happens is they, out of pressure and desire to please the parents, they might go ahead and get their degree and all that, and they might work as an engineer for a little while or something, but it is only so long that you can repress your true nature. It's going to come out. Like Krishna says, what can repression accomplish? And they end up doing what they're going to do anyway. And it turns out to be like a big waste of money and energy trying to force them to, do what's not natural for them. So yeah, we don't want devotees being miserable and being resentful, being forced into a situation that's not right for them. So we need to give everybody the right conditions for their growth, just like a seed. Yeah. And what matters is what's favorable for cultivating pure devotional service. So that's like, yeah, for some individuals, it's one thing, for other individuals, it's another thing. But yeah, our goal is not to stay brahmachari forever, or the goal is not to get married or to take sannyas. The goal is to become a pure devotee of Krishna. And I was having this discussion with my spiritual master not long ago when I was like frustrated about my family. I was like having a lot of trouble and it just seemed like totally irresolvable. And then he had helped me in different ways to try to work things out, and just nothing was going to work out. And then he said, look, just to remember why you joined the movement. Why did you join the Hare Krishna movement? It wasn't to have a husband who treats you nicely. It wasn't to have children who like communicate with you regularly. It was to become a pure devotee of Krishna. It was to, reawaken your dormant love for God. He says, so just, that's what you're here for. And you can do that just as well and probably better in the situation that you're in right now. So just go for that and don't worry about all these other things, because ultimately they're all temporary and external. The real thing is your pure devotional service. So when he said that, in one sense it's heavy, but in another sense it was so nice. It was such a relief. It was just like somebody opened the window and let in the fresh air. I was like, yes, that's my goal. That's really what I'm aspiring for. That's the only thing that ultimately really matters. So yeah, so that's it. That's what we really need to aim for, our love for Krishna. And if we're sincere in attaining that goal, then Krishna will definitely make sure that we're in whatever circumstances is favorable for us. We don't need to, worry about it too much, or, spend sleepless nights racking our brains over like whether I should get married or not. It will all happen, Krishna will direct the course of our lives in the most favorable way for becoming pure devotees, because he wants us to be. And Srila Prabhupada says this: one has to become a pure devotee, that's all. Other things are circumstantially favorable, either grhastha, brahmachari, vanaprastha, or sannyas. So yeah, it's not that anyone is better than the other. We just have to be in the one that's right for us, and then follow the rules of that ashram properly. The external circumstance might be different, but the essence is still what Lord Chaitanya came to teach: vairagya, vidya, nija bhakti yoga. Vairagya pervades all of them. Vidya, transcendental knowledge, spiritual knowledge, pervades all of them. And bhakti yoga pervades all of them. Because bhakti, all those things just come with bhakti. And renunciation doesn't come from giving things up. It comes from bhakti. And that's what we learn from the Srimad Bhagavatam, this verse here. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayatya Shivairagyam Yanam Chayat Ahaitukam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. So this is important to remember. And also that bhakti comes from what? The bhaktas. Yeah, bhakti comes from the association of those who have bhakti. That they give us bhakti. And so, yeah, whether you're a brahmachari in the ashram serving devotees of Krishna, or you're a grihastha living in a family of devotees serving Krishna, or you're a vanaprastha or a sannyasi traveling and preaching with devotees serving Krishna in that way, then in any ashram there's renunciation, there's spiritual knowledge, there's devotion. And therefore these two paths, which appear to be different paths, pravritti and navritti, they come together when in bhakti, in the process of bhakti, based on the principle of yukta vairagya. Because in other paths, it's like the sannyasi is not engaging with the world. He's just renounced. And the grihastha is not renounced. They're just engaged in the world. They're just like doing their rituals for, material gain and stuff like that. So, but in bhakti, both of them are engaged. The sannyasi is also engaging with things in the world. He's not living in a cave. He's like, going around the car. He's got his mobile phone. He's got his laptop. He's flying the airplane. He's like doing stuff. And the grihastha is not just, preoccupied with, rituals and things for material benefits, karma kanda and all that, but they're preaching and they're practicing devotional service, and they're doing basically the same practices that the sannyasi is doing. So the sannyasi is engaging with the things in the world in ways that are similar to the way the grihastha is, and the grihastha is renounced similar way that the sannyasi is. So the two paths kind of come together in one flow, which is bhakti yoga, and that's Prabhupada emphasized this idea of unity and diversity. That in bhakti yoga there's unity because we're all doing the same process, and the more we become advanced in Krishna consciousness, the more we can appreciate this unity and diversity, and then there won't be any tensions or any issues. Yeah, so with that, I'll end this presentation, and we could do a little quiz there. You guys want to do a little quiz?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the questions that I put on the flyer. I just put them here to see if, okay, so let's see if we achieve the objectives, at least as stated on the flyer, that all these questions would be answered. All right, which is better for my spiritual life, marriage or renunciation? It's a trick question. What's that? Here's the mic.
You can either be married or not married, but you have to practice renunciation.
Okay, yeah. So the two are not mutually exclusive, right? There's renunciation in marriage. So yeah, it's either way, you need to practice renunciation in marriage or in so-called, one of the renounced ashrams. So then what's better? It depends on the individual. Yeah. So then we have to look at our nature and all those things that we talked about in the first presentation. Okay, good. Who does the question to marry or not to marry apply to? Only men or women too? Women, both. Yeah, both. Okay. What factors need to be considered when deciding whether to marry or not?
Is this favorable to my Krishna consciousness?
That's the main one, right? Yeah. Anything else? Steven?
Am I qualified?
Am I ready? Am I qualified? Yeah. Good. Anything else? You want to say something? You're going to say that one.
Yeah, so also is my potential spouse mixed up in devotional service?
Yeah, so it's about finding the right partner, that's like a big thing. And we looked at like ways that you could do that, taking advice from senior devotees, doing the astrology compatibility and stuff like that. Okay. What prior training is required for a successful marriage?
For grounding in Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, good. What else?
Practice of mind and sense control,
Yeah,
celibacy.
yeah, good.
This isn't really a formal training, but just in relating with other individuals in a proper, respectful way.
Yeah, we talked about that, like how to act in the marital relationship. And we've had many examples of that, right, over the past few sessions. Different examples from the Bhagavatam. Okay, good. What do all those negative statements in the scriptures about women and family life actually mean?
They're meant to many different things, but alone to teach us to avoid. And they're null and void when it comes to practicing Krishna consciousness in the grhastha ashram.
Yeah, good. Okay, great. Is there a dark side to renunciation also?
Yeah.
That's one of my. Yeah, what is it?
1980s is kind
Yeah, basically. Yeah, so false renunciation, which manifests in the many it's called social ills. Okay. What misconceptions exist in our movement about family life and how can we refute them? All right, we kind of did that. We don't need to go through all that again. What does true renunciation look like?
Remembering Krishna and using everything for him.
Yeah. Yukta Vairagya. Okay, good. What's Yukta Vairagya, Kevin?
Whoa.
That's using things for Krishna service.
Yeah. Of the 4 ashrams, which one is the best?
Brahmachari. That's the dark way. No, yes, manifest.
In whichever ashram we can become pure devotees, which will be favorable for ashram pure devotees.
Yeah. Basically, all the ashrams are equal. It's just whichever one is best, more suitable for us becoming pure devotees. Good. All right. So then, what are all your reflections on this?
Awesome pictures.
Stephen?
I just really appreciated the well-roundedness of the presentation in terms of hitting, all of the talking points on the subject, really major talking points, and emphasizing renunciation as an internal thing rather than, these external dynamics of the ashrams, and emphasizing the personal element of whatever ashram is most favorable for you as a person. Not that one ashram is better than the other, it's objectively.
Yeah, it's a super important point. Ariana.
I really liked how you, I guess, emphasized the difference between the typical Vedic culture and how it is to be applied in the modern day context. There's a lot more flexibility in today's society.
Yeah. You want to give an example of that?
Yeah, I really liked the whole how you said that masculine and feminine tendencies aren't limited by the body, and how negotiation in these types of relationships are so important premarital.
Yeah, discussing which roles everyone's going to play and stuff. Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. Kevin?
I appreciated how you brought up the topics that might seem like controversial, because when we do distribute books, people are going to read these lines and they might have questions. Like, what do you mean a woman is less than celibate? But like what you shared in the seminar, it was very helpful for our understanding, so that we can send that message.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Thank you. Rehan?
I feel a great peace in my heart that I don't have to worry so much about choosing what to do with my long-term career in Krishna consciousness. And I know that if I just sincerely practice every day, then naturally Krishna will reveal to me what is more favorable for me in my long-term progression of Krishna consciousness.
yeah, if we're sincere and we're honest with ourselves and we take proper guidance, then it's all going to be perfect. Madhu.
I had a good realization yesterday while running. I guess I didn't know this was in my heart, but I always had this idea that I have to be like an advanced devotee. I have to be that, like, you know, I have to strive for that. I have to try to be renounced. I have to just like go out and preach, like go somewhere far away and start a center or something, like Jacksonville. And then I realized, actually, if that's not my propensity, then it won't even be good for my Krishna consciousness. And Krishna is wanting me maybe to go a different route than that. And there's no pressure to like try to be a so-called really advanced devotee.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good realization. Yeah, because sometimes we want to do something big, do something wonderful, just almost out of like ego or just, you know, to get appreciation and stuff. Or maybe we want to do something big for Prabhupada, but yeah, but if it's not our thing, then yeah, we have to be properly situated in ashram. We've been talking about in terms of ashram, being in the right ashram that's suitable for your growth, but also in the right service within the ashram is also very important. And also you could say also association, within the right association that inspires you. Because you can be in the right ashram doing the right service, but if you're with people that don't inspire you, then you might need to change your association. And so all these things, it's a big picture.
Also, I just wanted to appreciate how you broke down all those verses on the second day of the new moon. And I got a different taste on how to read the Bhagavatam, how to really look at the words, read that little English, kind of like looking at the word like fallen. Like, what does it actually mean?
Yeah.
You know, people like we discussed that it's not like people just falling is an accident, and it's not like I'm gonna be a grhastha, so that means I'm falling down. You know, so I just like the way that we broke down those verses and really understood them deeply. And yeah, I really like the whole thing. Great.
Cool. Yeah, that actually helped me a lot too. Like I was just looking at those verses and thinking, how do we understand this? And then it just hit me. You know, sometimes you're trying to figure something out and it just hits you. It's like Krishna turns on the lights and you're like, I get it. That's why he said that, because that's what he meant. And it's like, yeah. So then I thought, let's try to bring that out. Thank you.
I like sharing examples. There were certain things throughout each day that just really stick in my mind. Help me to understand. It seems like on that day, when you gave the example of going to Vrindavan or friends going to Vrindavan, and you tell them all the different things to look out for, and you think, wow, I don't want to go to Vrindavan. It sounds like a terrible place. But it's so that they will have a good experience. And just like Madhu was saying, it really changed how I saw scripture. It's like, hey, look out for these things so you can have a nice, positive experience.
Yeah. Yeah, because all these, saintly people that are teaching in the Bhagavatam, they're all our well-wishers. They don't have an ulterior motive for telling us these things. They want to benefit us. So we have to see, how is this benefiting me in my spiritual life? Max, did you want to say something?
Yes. So, to marry or not to marry, if that is the question, then I will let Krishna guide and decide.
Jack, good program. Amrita? Speak into that mic. There you go.
I like the example of this. I like the examples you give, and they really ingrain the concepts and help me realize. Like, for example, there's so many seeds, but one seed will need certain conditions, is the word you use. So I really like that, because we're going to chant Hare Krishna, we're going to study the scriptures, we're going to eat prasada, but beyond these, we need certain personal
fine-tuning
that will help us most, and realizing what that is individually.
Okay, thank you.
Several other examples like that. I really appreciate them.
Rihat.
Yeah, I feel better vaccinated against fanatical preaching. Because especially when doing traveling book distribution, there are people who often preach to us that you should do this forever, this is the best thing. And it didn't feel like a lot of the time a very equal, well-rounded approach like Stephen was mentioning. That this presentation really resonates well in my heart because it's well-rounded. You glorify renunciation, you glorify pronounced grhasthas. It just felt very well-rounded. I feel better able to assimilate what people tell me. It sounded a little heavy on one side.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that was a big objective of mine in this presentation. Because you all join here at Krishna House, it's all very balanced and it's all very nice and stuff, but you go to different temples and people have like pretty like hard-lined ideas, and you know, sometimes you can come up against something like that from a devotee, a senior devotee, and become confused. So it's good to know, you know, what the Shastras say and how to understand it. And also, like Kevin said, you meet somebody on the street and they, you know, are like, I read that, what is that nonsense all about, you know? And then you know how to, so you know how to respond to people who have, you know, issues with Prabhupada statements or devotees who take them in an unbalanced way. And then we don't get thrown off kilter by them. It doesn't shake our faith in Srila Prabhupada or the process of Krishna consciousness. Okay, anything else?
There's another example that I wanted to highlight you gave today about Sarvadharma Priya. It was such a cool breakdown that it was renounce the dharmas, these lesser conceptions of life, and not renounce your house or your wife or your husband or your possessions. That's not what he said to renounce. He said renounce Sarvadharma, and the idea that anything other than pure devotional service will make you happy.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
And then all those other things too, right? That we need to renounce possessiveness and lust, anger, greed. Yeah. So it's basically renounce your anarthas. Renounce your material hang-ups and all your anarthas. And it's like, yay, you know, I want nothing more than to renounce these anarthas. And that's like, okay, I can do that, you know? And you can actually work on renouncing your anarthas in any ashram. So it's just so beautiful, you know, to understand actually, you know, what are we being asked to do in Krishna consciousness? It's not to change. We're not getting any benefit just by changing an external situation. The benefit is all internal. That's what we need to work on. We need to change the heart, not change our dress or change our living situation. We need to change our hearts. Okay, we can wrap it up then. Thank you all for coming and being faithful attendees over the 4 days. And thank all of you who are hearing on Zoom, who've been coming also, and all of you who will hear this in the future. Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.